Here we go. Focus. Speed. I am speed.
We will never sleep, cause sleep is for the weak. That we will never rest, so we're all fucking dead.
No, sir, man. I don't like that crap. I'm a rocker, dude, through and through. Here's my favorite bands. AC/DC, Van Halen, not Van Hagar, Skinner, Def Leppard.
All right. We're on in 5 minutes.
We're headlining. We shouldn't be going on until at least 11.
It's the prom. It's over at 11.
Hey guys, what the heck is going on? My name is Sam Cox, and this is the IMG podcast. Thank y'all so much for tuning in today. Today I got to sit down with the one and only Sean Rodriguez, bass player extraordinaire for the band The Wilder Blue. And if you haven't gotten a chance to check out The Wilder Blue yet, I would highly recommend pausing this podcast, go check out a song or 2 or 10 of theirs, and come back and listen to this podcast, and this whole entire thing will make a lot more sense. They are quickly becoming one of my favorite bands, and not only just me, but a lot of the people that listen to this type of music, or a lot of the people in this industry, love this band. And they have actually made a lot of really big strides in a relatively short amount of time. You know, for the time that they've been a band publicly, you know, the last few years or so, long enough to make a couple of records, they've come a really, really long way. And it's really not that surprising, because when you go dig deeper into this band and you kind of go and do your homework on them, you'll realize that a lot of these guys are actually veterans in the music industry. And chances are you've probably seen one or more of these guys live at some point. If you go to shows in the Texas Red Dirt Americana scene, because not only do a lot of them have solo careers, but they've played in some of the biggest bands in this industry. And Raglan has gotten the chance to play shows with the Wilder Blue in 2022, and we've really gotten to know these guys on a professional and a personal level, both. And I can honestly say that they are some of the coolest guys that we've met, and we've really gotten to kind of take notes alongside of them. Not only just playing shows with them, but behind the scenes, we work with a lot of the same mutual people. Like, we have some of the same team members, meaning PR and radio and that kind of stuff. So we've gotten to, kind of somewhat ride alongside of them, and again, kind of take notes. So we've learned a lot from these guys, and I wanted to kind of sit down with Sean today and just kind of pick his brain on how they run the Wilder Blue. And it's really kind of interesting to me. It's really intriguing how they do it, because it's not the way that most bands run their quote unquote business, and we'll dive into that, and we dive into some of their favorite songs to play, the recording process and the demoing process that they do. Also, it's pretty cool. We talk about them building their team, and then we get into a pretty in-depth conversation about the state of Texas country, Red Dirt, and Americana, and kind of comparing the genres and really kind of where it's at and where it's going. We talk about tips for upcoming artists, and we also talk about the Hideout. Now, the Hideout is kind of their Patreon, so to speak, but they run it in a really unique way. So everything that this band does, we're pretty intrigued by, because again, not only are they, veterans in the scene, but they're just the nicest guys that you'll ever meet, and they really, really know what they're doing. So if you're looking for a band to kind of, take some bits of knowledge from, this is definitely the band to do that. And I wanted to plug something really quick. I've been talking to, a lot of different friends and musicians about possibly doing advertisement on this podcast, because we have started to really get a lot of downloads for this podcast, and that makes me extremely happy. Thank you guys so much for listening to this. We've gotten into like the thousands now, and I'm really excited about that. I think we're going to start plugging ads for other music people into this spot right here. So if you guys are interested, feel free to holler at me at the email attached below. If you know me personally, reach out to me. And also wanted to plug the Patreon for Raglan down below as well. Now, if you want to support the podcast, there's not really a Patreon or any way you can do that specifically for the IMG podcast, but I'm attaching Raglan's Patreon down below if you wanted to, by chance, become a part of that. We have, bigger tiers, where you can get free merch and free tickets every single month, or there's little stuff like where, there's like a $3 whatever, where it's like, hey, I like this band or I like this podcast enough to pretty much give them pocket change like every month. So if you wanted to support this podcast, or if you were wondering how to support this podcast, you can do it at the Raglan link down below, because it all goes to the same place. So, but anyway, without any further ado, let's get into this. Are you going to Americana Fest early? You're gonna get there Friday.
Yeah, actually, my girlfriend and I are making a little vacation out of it. We're gonna go up Wednesday and try and catch Taj Mahal.
Oh, nice, nice. Oh,
Yeah.
Cool.
So it'll be a fun time, you know.
Yeah. We're gonna try to make it out to you. Well, I don't know, dude, because you guys are playing. Where you guys playing at?
We're playing at Robert's Western World.
Okay.
Friday, like afternoon at 4:30, I think.
Friday, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we're playing at Station Inn at 9 that night.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a show Friday, but it might be getting canceled. And if it does, then
shit.
Yeah, I know. But we're gonna be we're leaving tonight. We're leaving tonight for Nashville. So we're just going there for the whole week. So
nice. So that'll be cool. That'll be cool. We'll be out there hanging out, man. You know, I got, you know, a bunch of friends and bands that are playing. So it's rapidly becoming one of those things where there's too many things to try and do. Yeah.
This is y'all's first year going out there for Americana Fest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, it's easy to forget we're a 2-year-old band, you know.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. You guys have done a lot in 2 years, man.
It's crazy.
So yeah, let's get into that then. As far as everything goes with the Wilder Blue, I just wanted to kind of pick your brain about, you know, what you guys are doing, and the unique way that you guys run the Wilder Blue, and also just kind of like some background and, you know, some of the business side of stuff and some of the music side of stuff. So I guess we'll start off. What's the coolest place you guys have played so far, in your opinion? Because I know everybody's probably got favorite venues that you guys have played.
That's always a toughie, man. You know, anywhere you go has its own unique thing that you end up finding interesting, you know.
I'm gonna asking you all the questions I hate to be asked. So
yeah, I suspected that might be the case. You know, I think at least as far as like coolest show we've done so far, I think, you know, we opened for Midland a couple weeks ago, and that was not only was that place, Cook's Garage there in Lubbock, super hip. I mean, it was very cool spot, but that was just a cool vibe. You know, it's always an odd experience to walk out onto a stage in front of more than, you know, 2,000 people. Right. So, you know, and I've only gotten to do that a handful of times. So every time it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
But man, I feel like
the coolest place that I've seen that you guys have played. You guys were up in, was it Fairbanks or Juneau? Where you guys? Where were you at?
We were in Palmer.
Okay.
Which is like maybe an hour north of Anchorage.
Okay. Yeah.
And
anybody that was know, we're talking Alaskans. So
Alaska, you know, and Alaskans will definitely know. We got a lot of, you're from the lower 48s, you know.
Yeah. Oh, you're those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, you're those guys. We looked a little out of place walking around the fair. That was an interesting experience, I tell you, because, you know, it was a little hard to get specific info going in, and then we got there and it's like, so you're playing in the sluice box, which is like a shack with no AC that they sell beer in at the fair. Yeah. So only the people going in there are drinkers.
Green Hall of Alaska. Yeah.
Basically, it was like a tiny little green hall, but I mean, especially that first night, people were just chomping at the bit for more entertainment. Yeah. That's cool. It was awesome. It was a cool time. Man.
Okay, so as far as the history behind the Wilder Blue, I know that, you know, you guys are I don't know, more or less. You guys probably hear the term a lot, like super group or whatever. You know,
you know,
I know that everybody kind of has their own background. You know,
our policy is to let other people say that.
Yeah, there you go. And so, what was your? Because I know pretty much the background on just about everybody except for you. And to be honest with you, like, I don't know a ton about you. So like, what did you do before, you know, not to get into your whole entire, like, well, I was born in blah, 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 you know?
Yeah, no, I'll do my damnedest to keep it brief. Yeah. Trying to think of the best way to do this. I guess I'll work backwards. So for the 2 years prior to the Wilder Blue, I played for Bree Bagwell, rapidly becoming a legend in the Texas scene. You know? Yeah. But interestingly enough, that was my kind of first foray back into playing country music in Texas since I was in college. And all the time between playing with Bree and leaving college, it was all, you know, I played in an indie rock band out of New Orleans for a while.
Okay.
And I played with a funk band called Roxy Roca out of Austin. and just kind of was all over the map, man. I lived in Houston doing blues gigs and jazz gigs, and moved to Austin and started doing rock gigs and funk gigs. And one day I was just getting a little annoyed with the pay grade, and just by happenstance, my buddy Alan Green called me one day and was just like, "Hey, Seth's leaving. Bree needs a bass player. You want to come do that?" And so I was just like, "Yeah, sure." And I had met Bree in college just by happenstance. I went to Texas A&M, and she used to come out there. I mean, she still does play out there in College Station, quite a bit, but she would come out there, and we had mutual friends. And, I had a buddy who was like, "This is the gig you want. You want to play for her. She's up and coming." That was like 10 years ago or whatever. Yeah. And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be cool." I don't, country music is not really my thing, but sure. And obviously that didn't really pan out until 6 some odd years later.
Right.
But I just I kind of wormed my way back to country music, not only just because I wanted money, but I mean, money,
dude, everybody always
makes the world go round. It's like, I definitely want a gig that pays well enough.
Yeah, the Texas country scene, you'd be surprised at how many people that run around in the same circles that we do and play with, everybody in the scene. They're all musicians from like the punk rock scene or the metal scene or the jazz scene or whatever. And they were like, I didn't ever start making money until I really started to play with like an established act, you know what I mean? That like that consistent, so
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and that was kind of like, when I was in high school, I remember I watched this James Brown documentary one time. I think it's called Mr. Dynamite. And I was a trumpet player originally.
Nice.
I picked up bass because we wanted to start a band in high school.
Yeah, there you go.
I was watching this documentary, and the great legendary Fred Wesley, trombonist from James Brown's band, the JBs, and Parliament Funkadelic, and just all kinds of stuff. He had this line in the documentary where he was saying that he's a jazz player at heart, and he took the James Brown gig so he could make enough money to make his own music on the side.
That's fair. Yeah.
And that was kind of always my overriding notion of what I wanted to do.
Right.
It wasn't until I started doing it that I realized it's like, oh yeah, you could have done that in the 60s.
Right. Yeah.
Doing that in the 2010s is not as feasible as it once was.
Yeah. And it's it's so hard too, like unless it's kind of weird, the smaller the market that you go to, sometimes the more money you can make, because if you're in somewhere like Austin, I'm sure that correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know, it may not pay as much as something that like Midland or
sure,
Lubbock, like Lubbock may pay more than most Austin gigs just because I don't know, Nashville and Austin, places like that, it's like there's so many musicians there, and just, like, so many people will play for little that it's kind of like but it kind of makes it to where it's like, well, but what quality of musician do you want?
And I think that is the nice thing about Austin is, the quality of musicianship is really high. Like,
right.
You go out on the road and you see bands all over.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I see bands, I'm just like, man, I'm glad I live in Austin, because whether the band is okay or great or whatever, it's like, if I were at home, I could see a band like this any night of the week, or be in a band like that any night of the week. That is the nice thing about the small market. And Nashville's the same way. I would almost say that depending on where you're at in Nashville, it probably on average maybe pays a little more than living in Austin.
That's fair. Yeah.
But, depending on where you get in, where you fit in, and depending on how that goes for you, you can play 5-6 nights of the week without too much trouble,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But
especially as a bassist.
Kind of exactly. Yeah. That kind of money gets, I don't know if addicting is the right word, but I know people that moved to Nashville and they wanted to just be like a studio musician or a songwriter or something. And then they started playing out on Broadway, and they're like,
$400 a night,
and they're like, the money's too good to not,
Mm-hmm.
so, and then they just ended up kind of getting stuck like in those gigs and stuff. So, but yeah, dude. So let's talk about what I'm really kind of intrigued with you guys about is the fact that the Wilder Blue isn't like, quote unquote, like Zane and the Wilder Blue or something. It's a five person business, and everything is, from what to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, everything
100% is.
Ways. Yeah.
And that was a conscious choice Zane made.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard, we've talked about it before. We probably haven't talked about it personally a long time, but I've heard Zane talk about it. We've talked about it in other interviews and stuff, but it was a conscious choice Zane made, kind of like it's like if you applied for a job and they say they really want you, and there's like, well, we'll offer you a stock option.
Mhm.
It was kind of the vibe. Is like, we're offering. Zane is basically, I'm offering the potential that if things go really well, then we're all just even split and doing well together.
Yeah.
And it is, definitely a psychological, way of being like, okay, I'm going to make sure these guys don't just up and leave,
Right.
Because that is kind of the problem of the hired gun singer songwriter thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I don't have to stay here. I can go, if somebody calls me, or if I just don't want to do it, I can go do something else.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's one thing I was going to pick your brain about was, what is your experience being a quote unquote hired gun or part of the band, quote unquote, versus being in the Wilder Blue, where like you are 20% like of everything? Like I'm sure there's probably like benefits of both sides, and then maybe like certain scenarios where like, oh yeah, like you were saying, like you can turn down a gig if you want, if you're that quote unquote hired.
It's a little bit contextual. It's like, if the Wilder Blue weren't doing as well as we were doing, I don't know if my answer would be the same.
That's fair. Yeah.
But I will say that in general, there is a lot of there's a lot more kind of just like peace of mind in a stability way with being in a band that's that you own.
Right.
And like, I've been in bands where that's kind of an unspoken agreement, when you're especially like when you're in the rock scene or kind of an indie scene, it's a little bit less, and maybe this is just all bands, but it's not most artists just aren't business minded. They don't think, well, we should have a contract that says we all own this band. And I think that's the real kicker. It's like, if you really want to do it and it be a thing where, like, what's the easiest way to diffuse attention amongst a group? Well, you need to establish that it's not just the singer and there's an unspoken, we're in it together, because you're not really in it together. Like, we live in America. Everything is legalese at the bottom. It's, it's all contracts and lawsuits all the way down. So you got to be careful about that kind of thing, although, and I still do a lot of hired gun work. I mean, I played 2 gigs yesterday. But, and I like you said, I love the freedom of being able to be like, somebody texts me, and depending on my mood or where the gig is or what it pays, I could be like, no, I don't really want to do that,
Yeah.
And I mean, even as far as like, I've been pretty harsh to people sometimes. Like, I've done gigs on 6th Street where it's like, no, I'm not going to sing because it's not going to pay me enough to sing.
Right. Yeah.
I already play bass, and that's hard.
Yeah. I'm sure you've been in situations where there's been animosity or something, where this person got paid more than this person, or like this guy's been hired in the band longer, so he's just kind of been moved up on salary.
And I would say I've been fortunate to never necessarily have that experience explicitly. Like, if that did happen, I didn't know.
Right.
Which was fine by me at the time. Like, it wasn't even something I considered.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I think there's also a place to be like, well, depending on the situation, it's like, this is so-and-so's band. I mean, they need to make a living, and they're paying basically their employees.
Right. Exactly.
So there's a certain amount of that's, normal or understandable.
Mm-hmm.
But there is, like I said, there's just a kind of security in the camaraderie aspect of, you're all in it together. Like, you can't leave someone at the bottom of the hill if we're all trying to make it to the top,
I love the way that, you guys run everything. And I love just watching, because you can tell you guys are, even in person, just, I mean, you guys love playing with each other, and I think that you guys are all, not that you're not not everybody's fresh out of college or whatever. So you're not all like, oh my God, this is my first, but like, you're very like seasoned musicians. And I'm not calling anybody old in the band, but you've been around the block, and you know how to weed out the bullshit, and it's just, it's nice to see a band out there on the road. Cause we were together in Des Moines, in Iowa last month with you guys. Des Moines, and or back in July, 2 months ago. And you guys hopped off the bus and you guys were just like ready to go. You guys were like, hell yeah, man, let's get in here. And and we might have played for 80 people, but you guys played like you guys were playing for 1,000, and just we really respected that about you guys. And I heard Zane saying something about you guys were just a 5-person split, and I thought that was interesting because the only other band I think I've ever heard of that did something like that that's actually still sustaining was like Randy Rogers band, because I think those guys have been together for like 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
Well, that's essentially where Zane got half of the reason Zane started this was having, a 3-way conversation with Randy and
okay, there you go.
I forget who else. I think Parker McCullum.
Yeah.
And Randy didn't say we've been together 20 years part, but he just described the fact that they're all in it together and they go through everything together, and it's that aspect, that brotherhood thing that keeps them going.
Mm-hmm.
And most bands don't have that. They just don't.
Right.
You can't be someone's brother and their employee up to a certain point. It's like at some point the fact that you're being employed by this person is going to supersede how much you love them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Brady's the fiddle player for Randy Rogers band, and we played with him yesterday or 2 days ago, and I was kind of like, yeah, man, I'm interviewing Sean from the Wilder Blue in a couple of days, and I like just curious, because they kind of have like the same mindset as you guys. How is it being like in a 5-part company technically? He's like, we ain't had a fist fight yet, so that's pretty good. For 20 years, like, we haven't had a physical altercation yet.
That's a good answer.
We're doing pretty good, man.
Funny too, because they were younger when they started that, and they had the wherewithal to think we should do that.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had conversations before where we, it's like, if we were all in our 20s and we tried to do this business, we're not necessarily sure it would work.
Yeah.
Not to mention, I mean, if we were all 20 years younger, I wouldn't even be old enough to be in the band. So
right. Are you the youngest guy in the band?
Yes, by far.
So who has the best, besides you, who has the best facial hair in the band? Because you guys all got pretty rocking facial hair. If you had to pick one.
Oh man, that's tough. That's a toughie. I mean, I'm really fond of when the rare occasion when Paul grows his beard and then he'll just shave a mustache for fun for like a day or two. That is, for some reason, that's my favorite thing. Yeah. Him and Lyndon both can do a very respectable, like kind of biker handlebar.
Yeah.
And I love Andy's beard. He had a tragic accident with the barber a couple months ago, and it's not as huge and crazy as it used to be, but
yeah.
If everybody, I would feel bad if I said me.
That's why I said besides you.
Right, exactly. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, you see pictures of you guys or promo pics. I'm like, man, this could be like a Wrangler commercial. You know what I'm saying? Let's talk about building the Wilder Blue team, because there's people listening to this that are musicians trying to like take the next step, or they're trying to start a band or whatever. And so in talking to you guys technically started this band 2 to 3 years ago, maybe give or take 3, 4. Yeah. Your first release was a couple years ago, but along the way you guys assembled a team, because it takes like a lot of people behind the scenes to do all these things. And I know one person, well, 2 people, I guess. So Sean, he is your agent / tour manager. Jen, your radio promoter. We actually share the same radio promoter. Who else do you guys have behind the scenes working with you guys?
Well, for this last album cycle, we hired a distributor, Stephanie, with Soundly Music out of Nashville.
Okay.
And that's kind of the major team. I mean, other than that, we pretty much do everything in house. I mean, me and Sean and Zane all make graphics. I make a lot of show graphics, and Zane's designed a lot of our merch graphics, and so is Sean. And we really do try and handle as much as we can in house. I mean, even down to the last 2 records we just produced ourselves. The only outside help we had was the wonderful, lovely, inconceivably incomparable Matt Pence from Echo Lab Studios. He plays with Shaky Graves now.
Okay.
He's a drummer, fantastic drummer.
Okay.
But he owns the studio out in Denton, and he was basically our engineer. And he can cook up crazy sounds. He's got great ideas. But largely, outside of Jen helping us out on the radio, we had Angela Backstrom.
No
run
way.
us
Yeah, that's
Americana Radio.
that's us
Yeah.
too. Yeah, we have the same. So we have the same radio team, like on both sides.
Yeah,
that's
we
awesome.
definitely have the same team.
I
That's
didn't know
awesome.
you guys had Angela too. That's awesome.
Yeah. And that was an interesting thing too, because we are trying to figure out how to ride the line of being a Texas band, but being a national act, and trying to fit somewhere between being just a country band and something else, something that people call Americana. And
exactly. Yeah, I was and we kind of made that decision this past year, probably about a year ago, because I was having a conversation with somebody that manages a couple different acts like in the scene, and one of his bands that he manages was a Texas band for a really long time, and they finally went Americana a few years back, and I asked his opinion about it, and he said, man, sometimes you're in this scene and you're trying to, I can't remember the exact phrase, but he said, trying to fit like a square peg in a round hole, or whatever that phrase is. And he said, once you go Americana though, he kind of just breaks open to, like what opportunities like you can have, because Texas, I feel like kind of has this, it's broken down into Texas rock or like traditional Texas, and you guys are definitely like way out there. You guys are just musically like feeling the miles. I think that's a good example for like where would that, I mean, that doesn't really fit anywhere besides Americana. Maybe it's got the banjo kind of ground to country music, but
but it's also got a kind of like standard disco beat.
Exactly.
Lead bass line kind of thing. And stuff like that is interesting too. It's like when we do go in and are kind of workshopping what a tune's going to sound like. Like, Zane didn't write Feeling the Miles anything like that. It wasn't even in a minor key, I don't think. I think it was in a major key when he first brought it. And then a week before we went into the studio, he goes, "Hey, I changed the whole thing around. We're going to do something different." I already learned it.
That's cool.
I need you to come up with a fat bass line. Okay, sure. I can do that.
So the other guy, he's kind of behind the scenes a lot. Sean, he kind of seems like y'all's like Swiss Army knife. I heard that term recently, like where he's kind of
great description.
He's
a jack of all trades, man.
Exactly. Yeah, because he buys for you guys on the road, and he tour manages, but he's also like your monitor tech and your front of house and your I mean, like he does like so much stuff.
Sean came with Zane. He had been working for Zane for almost 6 years, I think, before we started this band. And we're really lucky to have him. I tell people too, it's like it is considered a luxury to be able to have a front of house guy. And it is 100% a luxury to have a front of house guy.
Totally.
And it's definitely a luxury for us, because I mean, our set is just so complex that if you threw it down in front of the next house sound guy, they would be like, okay, I can, I guess, pay attention to when you're switching instruments and who's singing what and when and why and where. That it's an incredibly difficult job. So, props to Sean all the time for putting up with us and also doing it just a stellar job.
Having your own front of house is cool, because if Paul goes into a guitar solo, like he knows when to just bump it up a few dB and then bump it back down. You know what I'm saying? Like having somebody that knows all of your songs, like having your own front of house, it really is. I mean, if you can get to that point, I mean, it's like it's nice. You know what I mean? Because you're kind of just relying on sound guys at certain venues. just and, maybe know.
There are great sound engineers, live sound engineers all over the country. But like I said, for us, it's really it's a complexity issue more than anything else. I've done plenty of shows where it sounded great, but it would be hard, like noticeably harder to make us sound great.
Yeah. Sean does a good job at it too, man. I've talked to him because I got to know him before I even got to know any of you guys, because Jen gave me his contact back in May, and she goes, "I'm working both of you guys. You guys would do great on some shows together." And I was like, "Oh my gosh," because it was funny, because we were listening to you guys like on the road on the way to Houston one day, and she goes, "Hey, I'm passing your number to this guy named Sean from Atomic. Do you know him?" And I go, "I know Atomic." And she goes, he represents the Wilder Blue, and I was like, I was literally just listening to them like 2 seconds ago. She goes, you guys should do some shows together, and I was like, absolutely, yeah. So
yeah,
but, Sean, you don't see many people behind the scenes that work as hard as Sean does, dude. Seriously,
absolutely.
I mean that because he does so much stuff, dude. Like I said, he's kind of like a jack of all trades, and he probably does more than I've even mentioned on here, like probably way more. But
yeah, I mean, on a functional basis, he does a lot, and we're, you know, we keep Sean really, you know, close to the business. I mean, we but while at the same time also trying to find ways to ease the load off him. So part of the reason I do a lot of our like social media marketing is so that he doesn't have to do that. We can't pile on, can't make him Atlas. He doesn't need to hold the whole world
play
up,
bass.
you know?
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, because that's another thing too. It's really easy to get lost, I think, in the, especially when you're a hired gun, that kind of compartmentalized, like, oh, I just play bass, you know,
right.
I'm just here to play bass.
Yep.
I mean, you know,
yeah, like don't ask me to do anything else. Yep, not my job.
Like I'm not really trying to do anything else.
Right.
And you know, I guess if you really dig down to the bottom of the bedrock of that, it's, you know, maybe a work ethic thing, but you know, it's like, yeah, I think it can be tempting to get lost in that mindset, you know?
Yeah. One thing I wanted to kind of pick your brain about also was you guys have 2 records out, and what is something I asked Bree the same question the other day, because I actually had her on the last podcast. So
oh, nice.
Yeah, because she just put out the new record, and so what's something that you guys did on this record that you didn't do on the first one that you kind of learned that you should or shouldn't do on the first one, and it actually paid off on the second one? Because, you know, with each record you kind of get smarter, you learn how to market, you kind of figure out who you are as a band. Yeah. Is there something that you guys did on this, like the self-titled, that paid off and where you're like, okay, cool,
well,
it ended up working?
I mean, I played bass on all of it.
There you go.
Which I did not do on the first album.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that I think probably people don't need to know unless they go to the website and read the whole list of credits.
Right.
But you know, by the time Zane called me, they had already almost finished that first album. So, you know, I got in at the very tail end, did a couple tracks, and I mean, Zane gave me the option to be like, if you're not into it, we'll just pay you for the studio time.
Right.
Which is a pretty sweet deal, you know. I feel like my studio rate is enough to make that worth it.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's hard to say, because, you know, when we put out the first one, it was peak pandemic in the early days.
Yeah.
And we kind of just, you know, we had a big launch plan. Basically, like everything that we did for the second album, as far as hiring Jen and Angela and doing all that stuff, you know, having people write a bio and publicist, and we were going to do all that for the first one, and we scrapped it because of the situation at hand.
Right.
And so we did that this go around. And, you know, I think because there's 5 of us, there's always going to be some internal debate about every decision, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure if we've kind of landed on how we feel about how this album release went, you know? So many just, you know, synchronistic, like chance things happen, like the Luke Combs tweet, stuff like that, you know?
Yeah.
You can't pay for that. That just happened.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's like,
publicists can't do it. Well, most of the time they can't, you know what I'm saying? That has to happen organically, you know?
Right. And so, you know, it's tough. They just feel like almost, aside from the fact that they're both music albums, they almost feel like completely different animals.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I suspect the third album will probably kind of have that same feel to it. It's just like, we're going to do, you know, just kind of, sometimes I feel like we kind of approach it from every album is the first album.
There you go. Okay.
And I think that's a good way to look at it, you know?
Okay. Well, okay. Let me extend the question then. So what's something that, and I know that I'm throwing over a lot of really hard questions at you. Sorry, man. But
no, it's fine.
What's something that you think on the next record what's something that you think on the third album you guys might try, whether it's marketing, whether it's touring, whether it's
well, I can tell you something concrete that we're going to try.
Okay.
Is we're having an outside producer come in to see what having a sixth opinion is like.
Okay.
A dedicated sixth opinion, which is that is a little dangerous only because now we have an even number.
Right.
And just as a technicality, like you could end up with a dead tie.
Yeah, there you go.
So in a way that could be problematic, although I still think the odds of a true tie are probably pretty slim.
Right.
I also think the odds of the producer likes this and all five of us don't, that seems slim too. Like both of those seem extreme.
Yeah.
So I'm not so worried about it, but I am super interested to see how it works out,
Yeah. I saw a video of you guys record on your bus. That's pretty cool.
We do we do pre-production and demos on the bus this year. We're trying that out as a method. So in the past, well, I say in the past, the first album the guys kind of did on a tear at a couple different studio sessions, hammered it all out, in a way. It probably took them the better part of a year to get that whole situation done and sorted. And then the second album, as a kind of a function of this, our website Hideout thing, the subscriber
another question
model.
Well,
and I'll do a quick preface, is to say that, because we offer the fans a song a month, for the last album cycle, we went all the way with each one of those songs at a time. So we would just book 3 or 4 days, try and hammer out 1 or 2. And then when we were done with 12 songs, 1 for each month, that's the album,
Yeah.
And this album, we're approaching it a little bit differently, partially because we have, I think, I don't want to use the word backlog. That sounds like it's like they're just waiting, but we have more than 12 songs we could choose from.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of a kind of just like, oh, well, what do we want to give the subscribers? But also we're kind of trying to split the difference between like, well, we want to also be prepared because we're doing stuff on the bus, that's all demoing out stuff in pre-production. We're not treating those as finals. We're going to go and do just a 2-week stretch in the studio, and hammer them all out. So it's entirely plausible that we get to the studio and, a couple of the songs didn't go to the subscribers. They just end up on the album. We'll have to see about how that goes down.
Yeah. One thing that you guys do that I think is really cool is you guys have not only like a super loyal fan base, but you have a way to, on one side, kind of market that fan base, but at the same time, like give your fans something a little extra. And most people just have a Patreon, but you guys kind of go a little farther, and you almost kind of make it a club, if that makes any sense. I don't know, or just like tell me about it. Tell me, because Sean filled me in on it a couple months ago, and you guys are the reason that we started a Patreon like 2 months. So, and I was like, Sean's like, hey, listen to this podcast, and he sent me a podcast, and I listened to it on the road.
The Web3 thing.
Oh yeah. And I was like, okay, cool. And then so we ended up doing that, and we started getting people rolling in. And he's like, it's more or less kind of a steady income. I mean, it fluctuates. People, probably join or cancel or whatever. But yeah, you go. Tell me about that, and tell me how you guys work all that.
Well, it is functionally kind of like Patreon. I mean, I love Jack Conti, and I love all the music he makes. And I'll be honest, I've never actually gone to Patreon's website ever.
Okay. All right.
It's like the movie Avatar for me. I've still never seen it.
Right.
But it's hilarious. Like, again, just the timing of things is insane, because Zane kind of had a notion of this idea. We were sitting there talking about it one day, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before they announced the shutdowns. Like we were just like, wouldn't that be cool? We could do something like that. It'd be kind of like Patreon, but if we kept it ourselves. And that's basically what it is. If you go to our website and you pay to subscribe, you get you get the everything. And again, because I've never gone to Patreon, I don't really know what the format of it is, as far as like what's available to a subscriber.
Right.
I imagine it's kind of like a feed, an archive of everything you've posted.
Right. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. I mean, there's different tiers and you get different, some people have, you pay so much and you get free tickets every month, Hayes Carl does something where like he has Patreons that pay $1,000 a month, and after a year they get a free show. It's like there he goes all the way up to,
wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. But
that's an interesting idea. I have to remember that.
Hey, there you go.
Always looking for new things we can give the members.
Yeah.
But it's nice because it's like, especially right now, it's like it is. I mean, it's fairly big, but I think with all things internet related, I mean, no matter how many people you have, only some number of them is really interested in like being on the internet, being on a forum. But we have a forum, and all of us are in and out of the forum. Because I use so much other social media, I'm probably on there the least.
Yeah,
to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to keep tabs on everything else we've got going that's forward facing. But I'll take pictures on the road and I'll only post them there, that kind of thing. Do try and keep a little bit of it, just be like, oh, this is for you guys. But we put all the music up there. We
all the demos and work
every time,
and all that stuff.
Work tapes, as soon as Zane or Paul or whoever really, I mean, has a song that's kind of finished singer-songwriter style on guitar, they'll post it up there for people to hear. And it really is, I think, Zane calls it making music for your biggest fans, specifically for them, and it is unusual, maybe not in this day and age, but I guess even still, it's unusual to get that kind of insight into, what a band does. And I am personally, I'm a big proponent of the notion that, we send them Zane puts a song out on the Hideout, and then we get it and we start workshopping it. And to me, it makes no difference if we workshop it, send them a workshop version, and then the version on the album is completely different, because then they got something even extra,
Exactly. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they're also going to get the album that's available. Whatever we do is available, including, Zane put all his solo albums up there. If you just want to listen to Zane Williams, you can do that, and, we just try and do anything to make it entertaining. We try and make it entertaining, and then we try and make the benefits be like, if we are at a place where we can reserve you a table, we'll reserve you a table, if, if you want to come out early and have a beer with us before we do anything, that's an option that comes up time to time, depending on the date or where we are or who's going, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And we try and get them, tickets to shows early. And it's a little, I think to me, it's almost a little bit broader than Patreon. It's like, we're not asking you to pay a tier per se.
Right.
Tiers are an option.
Yeah.
And it's like, it is more of a, give what you can if you want model than it is you'll get this if you give this.
Right. Yeah.
So in that way, it's a little bit different. And I think too, it also is like, I feel like there's an aspect of that that's easier on the consumer, because, they don't have to think too hard about it,
Yeah. So all the money go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, please. I was just
all the money that comes from the Hideout. What all does that go towards, if you don't mind me asking, like as far as everything for the band?
Pretty much solely studio time.
There you go. Okay, cool.
We're true to form about the whole music for the biggest fans thing. Is like, if you pay us, we're gonna make you music, and that's what the money's for. Pretty much entirely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, heck yeah, it's a pretty cool thing, because I don't know, man. I feel like Patreon really kind of picked up during COVID, but we didn't ever get into that because I don't know. We were always one of those bands. Well, me personally, I was like, I don't want to just get free money or whatever. You know, I always kind of felt bad about it, you know, but the way that Sean was explaining it and the way that, you know, at the end of the day, say we have another big crazy whatever, you know, you're kind of covered in a way, you know, you have some sort of income, you know, like coming in or whatever. You know, I know that you guys use it all for studio, but you know, for us it's you know, it's
just a supplement, you know.
It's steady, yeah. Exactly.
Which is good. I mean, I think, you know, especially in this day and age, people need that. And it is almost kind of odd. Like, I mean, I don't know how old you are. I imagine we're close to the same age. Okay. All right. So I kind of like when I was in middle school and high school was the MySpace generation.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And then they let high schoolers onto Facebook while I was in high school.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, there's kind of a it's almost kind of weird, the Web3 notion of being like, you know, we're gonna make communities online. Well, that's what the internet was in the 90s.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
yeah.
because you went to the forum website about planes or whatever that you liked, and that's what you did. You hung out with your internet friends,
right?
And it's cool because it's like we have a group of internet friends who are also our fans who we actually see relatively often, you know, especially the serious super fans we see a lot.
Dude, yeah, I was gonna say, man, it's kind of you can tell if, I'll put it this way, you guys have like just the fans. I've only seen you guys once, and you know, when we go to a lot of shows, we open for, you know, a lot of people, and sometimes people are there just hanging out I mean, you guys have fans that are just like crazy, man, and I mean that in the nicest way. Like you guys have like die hard freaking fans, dude. Like, I mean,
we have some excellent fans.
Yeah. And
you know,
you don't see it often. You don't see it often, like the people that you guys attract. Like, and I genuinely mean that. You know, the people that like the Wilder Blue attracts, it's really like they are ecstatic. You know what I'm saying? And I think one of the reasons why you guys have really kind of taken off in the short amount of time that you have, not only because of like the experience that all of you guys have had in the past, but you guys have diehard fans to where I feel like each one of those people that comes to your shows has probably told 10 people about you guys. You know what I'm saying? Like,
100%.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. Oh, it's so funny. When we started, so obviously, you know, Zane is a pretty well-established recording artist in Texas, and people love him. I mean, and rightfully so. He's, as far as I'm concerned, he's a legend. He writes incredible songs, 100%, you know?
Yeah.
And there was so there's a Facebook fan group for us called the Wilder Blue Crew. I don't know if you've run across that.
No, I haven't, but I need to get in it.
You know, you're welcome to join. But that group used to be called the Zaniacs.
Okay.
And you know, when we first started, there was a little bit of a worry that we were going to have to try and convert all these Zaniacs to the new thing. And we weren't necessarily sure how they were going to take it, because, you know, people go because they want to hear Pablo and Maria or Jake and Jill or, you know, Overnight Success or 99 Bottles, whatever Zane Williams song is their song. That's what they want to hear.
Yeah.
And we showed up and was like, look, we're not going to do that. You know, we might do one or two to fill some time at the top, you know, in the very beginning, but that's not why we're doing this. We're doing this to do something different. And, you know, I was going to call them recovering Zaniacs, but they're still Zaniacs at heart.
Recovering Zaniacs. That's good, man. Yeah. That's awesome, dude.
And it was very fortunate that, you know, at least all the people that did hear about it early from Zane's, you know, former life, they all went along for the ride. So they're here with us, and it's awesome. You know, it's awesome to be in a position where if you can hook them, you know, we already had a fan base that was ready to go in on this with us, you know?
Yeah. And you guys also had, you know, I said it earlier, but each one of you guys in the band, I mean, you're all, I don't want to make anybody sound old, but I mean this in a, you know, you guys are veterans, you know, in the scene, you know what I'm saying? Like everybody 100%. Knows. So I feel like everybody kind of went into, every single thing that you guys do. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Everything that you guys do, whether it's releasing music or how you present yourself online or how you're going to market the band, you guys probably are like, okay, well, this hasn't really worked in the past, so we're not going to do it this way. Or, you know, and every single guy in the band has kind of had a pretty good history as far as like, I mean, everybody's played with I mean, who are some of the other guys that everybody played with? I know Paul played with
Fowler.
Yeah.
Lyndon, aside from being a studio engineer and producer for like 12 years, he played with Roger Krager for a while.
Okay.
Andy played with Zane for 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
And I mean, like I said, I played with Bree, and that's an interesting thing too, that I don't think, because I only played with Bree for a brief bit, and I got to know people, I met people, and I'm the kind of guy who's like, they might remember that I have a mustache and be like, oh, that's the guy with the mustache.
That's a guy. That's
he plays bass. I remember that. I don't remember his name, but he was pretty good,
Yeah.
It's kind of my approach to having met people.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit striking to, as we got this thing going, start to kind of hear through the grapevine is like, oh yeah, I've heard about that. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Like, oh yeah, everybody, all these great players. And I was like, oh, am I one of those? I didn't realize I was one of those.
Like, oh wow.
I thought Andy was a great bass player, but I appreciate the compliment,
Yeah. Okay, so a year ago, we decided that we were going to go into the Americana route on the marketing side of things, because we knew we were going to be putting out the record that we just put out a couple months ago, and the 3 singles before that. Now, all of us being from the Texas scene, we're from Oklahoma, but it's Texas Red Dirt scene down here. It's kind of the whole whatever. But you guys also promoting to Americana. I guess a 2-part question. One, did you get any backlash from that? Because we heard from a few PDs at some stations and some other industry people like, oh, if you go Americana, some Texas people look down on that, like as in like you're selling out or something. And also, was promoting to Americana radio something that you guys were planning on doing from the beginning, whenever you guys had started all this?
When, like I said, we were going to do the big push for the first record, we had been talking to Angela about promoting that one then.
Okay.
And like I said, then because everything crashed, it was like, well, we got to save the money because we don't really know what's going to happen. So better to be safe than sorry. But I think that was always the plan. One of the things that is tough, and I remember you mentioning that, some people in Texas look down on that. And don't edit this out, I don't understand those people, because I don't even know what Texas country is. I don't know what that means anymore. I mean, it doesn't sound like what I hear in Austin, and all those bands are in Texas. I play in them, and it also doesn't necessarily sound like what we're doing. So I do think there's a little bit of just the nature of the music that got made and is being made is, it doesn't neatly fit into either.
Right.
It kind of, it straddles both in an odd way. And I think that's a feature, not a bug, personally. I really do appreciate the notion that we can go play a dance hall with the same songs we play all the time and people can dance to them. That's great.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a Waylon 2-beat or whatever,
Right.
But however you want to describe whatever you think it is, it's like Waylon Jennings sounds nothing like what Parker McCollum sounds like. And yet they call them both Texas country.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Certain PDs were just, which I'm not going to name any names, but they were in our old radio promoter from, 3 or 4 years ago. She was like, I wouldn't really go that route because, people almost kind of look down on it in a way because, Texas wants to keep things Texas, and, and that bridge between Texas and Nashville and the rest of the world is really starting to get built, and some people don't like that as much as like other people do because it's Texas country and it's our thing, and we've got so many artists.
That's what they said about the electric grid too, though.
Yeah, there you go, dude. Yeah.
And I was out of power for 58 hours, so I don't want to hear an argument like that. Like, I don't think that's a good idea for a number of reasons. One, like, being insular is not going to help you spread the good word of Texas everywhere else.
Right.
And if you can't have an Americana group from Texas that can also play in Texas and play everywhere else, then what do you have? I mean, it's just like saying ZZ Top should have never done the worldwide Texas tour.
Oh yeah.
Like,
is that the one with all those farm animals and stuff?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I saw the documentary. That was badass.
Oh yeah. I mean, if we could afford a vulture over Lyndon's head, I would be the first one to vote for that. You know,
Yeah, dude. And I don't know, man. It's kind of one of those things where, you know, we're from Oklahoma, and I tell people all the time that we have played in Texas and in Oklahoma and in this, you know, Texas red dirt scene, quote unquote, for, you know, 5 years now, 6 years by default, geographically by default, because it's an independent music scene down here, you know, and we are country-ish, you know. So but you know, once we started making music, I don't want to say making music to promote to Americana, but just making music that, you know, was Raglan. And some people were just like, yeah, man, it's kind of, you know, Texas isn't too, you know, fond of that, and they're going to look at you as kind of selling out.
I think I'm, you know, if I had to guess, and this is just a guess because I really don't know. I'm sure we did, you know,
Right.
I'm sure we did. I personally don't care, you know, especially coming from a background in just other musics that aren't Texas country.
Right.
I'm just like, you know, who cares? It's all music.
Right.
Like, I don't understand people that feel that way,
right.
that are just so proud of Texas they want to keep it to themselves.
Right.
I don't want to do that. I'm so proud of Texas. I want to spread the good word.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know.
Yep.
And it's like I said, it's like I you know, there's a lot of modern Texas country bands that I don't listen to because it's just not my thing.
Right.
But I'm happy they're out there, you know.
Right. Yeah.
I'm happy they're using the name Texas to promote this music, because even their music that I don't necessarily listen to doesn't sound like the stuff coming out of Nashville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. With Americana too, man, I feel like the Americana fan base, or like the typical Americana, you know, fan, there's something about them too, man, especially like, you know, when we're up with you guys, like in Iowa or like anywhere else that we go that's like outside of our region, you know, we'll go play up in like Wyoming or Montana or something. They're a little bit different, man. Like they kind of have like a, you know, different passion, I guess, if that makes any sense, because they don't get to see as many bands because like they're from like those outer regions, you know.
Right.
So I feel like 100%. You know what I mean. Yeah, it's kind of the Americana fan base is a little different, but with you,
and it's born out of a different place too. You know, it's like, I mean, the word Americana as a genre didn't exist until a band full of Canadians made American music. You know, American story music. That's what the band was. They only had one American. It was really just Robbie writing all these stories that he'd heard.
Yeah.
You know, about life in America over time, and we call it Americana. And it's like, when you listen to the band, what is it? What is it?
Right.
Is it a country rock band? They're not the Eagles. They have harmonies. It can get pretty funky and weird and loose, you know. I you know, or the same thing. It's like, and then, you know, they call Tom Petty Americana. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Right.
You know, Creedence Clearwater Revival writes music that sounds like it's from Alabama, but they're from California.
Right. Yeah. I really do think that in the next, I don't know, 5 years, there's really not going to be a whole lot of pushback from anything, because I really started to hear recently the term like Southern independent music scene. Like people have really started kind of like throwing that around, where it's just kind of like there's not even really, people don't even hardly use, unless they're talking about a red dirt band, you know, like the Great Divide or Red Dirt Rangers or Stony or whatever, you know, that's the only people they really refer to as like red dirt anymore. You know, when they talk about Texas country, I mean, what is that? You know, like, because 10 years ago it was Bree, Aaron Watson, Fowler, and Roger Krager, and now it's like, you know,
Colby Cooper and
Pegasus and the Rooftops. You know, like what is
Pegasus and the Rooftops?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
Slade Coulter. You know, and it's like it's always going to be going through that kind of shedding process of you know, new acts come up, and you know, they're popular in college, and
right,
you know, if they hold it together, they might get more popular.
Right.
And you know, the real truth is that most bands, you know, they kind of either they can make it to a place where they can all live, like survive, or they fizzle out, or they get huge. Those are the only three options, really.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So you kind of, I think the evolution is so inevitable. You know, I think the best thing you can do is just make music that you're proud of. And so long as you're proud of it, I don't think it matters. You know?
Yeah. And it's cool because with you guys, you can, you know, you take, again, I keep bringing the song up, you know, Feeling the Miles. I mean, that's that's an Americana song if I've ever heard one. But you know, and then you take you know, like Dixie Darling, that's like pushing bluegrass. You know what I'm saying? Like a band like you guys, I mean, again, you can play at a dance hall, or you can play a listening room, or you can play a bluegrass festival, you know, and you guys fit like kind of under the umbrella of a lot of different things, you know.
If anything, it almost, you know, and not to sound highfalutin about it, but it almost makes me feel more Americana than most Americana bands, because you know, there is that element of all those things American. I mean, jazz and funk and bluegrass and you know, even like to like a little bit of hip hop and classic rock. Like it's all of like a huge percentage of our influences across the board is American.
Right.
And so how can you get any more Americana than our greatest influences are these great American bands?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Or great American styles, you know?
Yeah.
And so if you're working in the framework of just a great American style of music, you know, we're not making British rock. Right. So I just, I think of it so broadly. I don't want to go on my crazy tangent about, I don't believe in genre at all. I'm a genre nihilist.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's for another podcast.
Yeah. Okay. So, favorite song you guys play live, or the biggest response that you guys get from a song that you guys play live?
Ooh, biggest response. I mean, I can kind of answer both. I think my favorite song to play is probably Goes to Lincoln, just because it's arguably the hardest from my point of view.
Okay.
You know, it's a toughie to play. You know, playing bass with the pick is already kind of hard. And I guess looked down upon in some circles.
Oh God. Whatever, man.
I still have those conversations, man. People just don't get it.
We there's 3 songs in our set that I have to pick up a pick for.
Yeah.
Because you just have to. You know what I'm saying?
You have to.
Yeah.
And honestly, as an aside, like I'm convinced that if you're in the studio, I think almost every single song maybe ever would benefit from being played like that, because then the mix is going to sound better at the end of the day.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I think the biggest response we typically get is usually from Palomino or Dixie, because those are the most well-known overall.
Okay.
But I don't know. There is something about the response of the, like, all the air getting sucked out of the room when we're all singing and nothing else is going on.
Oh yeah.
Those are good responses.
You know, like Wave Dancer and like that kind of stuff, or
like Jenny Lynn or Picket Fences.
Yeah. I would say just from me, again, I've only seen one of y'all shows, but
not for long.
We'll be I think actually we'll be with you guys in Lubbock next month. I think Sean put us on that show.
Cactus. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude. When you guys broke into Dixie Darling, people lost their fucking shit, bro. Like it's just it's one of those, like we were standing there. Who's your merch guy? What's his name? Devin. Okay, so we were standing there and I was just chatting with Devin, and this guy walks in. He's already a little drunk, and he walks over to the merch table and he goes, "Hey, you." And Devin's like, "What's up, man?" And he goes, "Are they going to play Dixie Darling?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Fuck yeah." And he's like, okay. You know, I don't know. You can tell that guy just came for that song. Yeah. I feel like that song is like a religion in itself, man. There's a handful of songs that, you know, really kind of like speak to people. Autumn is Autumn's a songwriter at heart, and there's not like a whole lot of music anymore that impresses her. And I mean that in the nice way. You're around music so much. You just,
I totally relate to that.
Yeah. And that's one of those songs where, like, I mean, in the car, like while we're on there, it's a once a week song. It's just because it's one of those that's really hard to get tired of, because even as a musician, if you're listening, you can pick something new that you never heard because there's so much going on. You know what I'm saying? Or you can hear a new harmony that you never heard or whatever. So yeah, it's one of those songs.
Right.
So yeah, anybody listening, if you haven't heard of Dixie Darling, well, surely if you've gotten this far into the podcast and you know who the Water Blue is, you probably heard of that song. But if not, go check it out. Yeah. And Picket Fences is a good one too, man. That's a good one. That kind of gives me an old like Alabama vibe. I really like that song. Yeah, I don't know if that's what you guys were going for, but it definitely reminded me of. I think it's maybe just like the constant kick drum, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely I think Duke Ellington probably said it best. It's like 4 on the floor will keep them on there the whole time.
There you go. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Or I'm paraphrasing poorly, but
yeah. Oh yeah.
You can look it up. If you're listening, you can look it up.
All right. One more question. Last question. So again, people listen to this that they are, people that do this as a hobby or do this on the weekend. They're kind of weekend warriors, or maybe some people listen to this that are trying to take their career to the next level, whatever that means for anybody.
Sure.
It's something different for everybody. But we're going to speak to the people that aren't necessarily, that are still kind of working the 9 to 5 and they want to play music full time. What advice do you have for people like that?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is that, if you have to be certain, you have to be absolutely certain that you can see yourself doing nothing else, because this is a brutal grind. And I know you know that. But if you're really intent, you really want to do it, then the best thing you can do for yourself is to, get yourself to a place where it's happening all the time. Because if it's not happening all the time, then you end up sinking into that weekend warrior thing where it's like, well, I'm in my small town and I play the local restaurant on the weekends, and what do I, but I work my job. And if you feel good about what you're doing, you gotta get yourself to a place where it's happening. The music has to be happening all around you all the time. Right. I think that's the true nature of the beast. I mean, even if it's like you move to Houston, I mean, there's a healthy scene in Houston. You could get gigs, there's nothing stopping you. But I think you have to be willing to make a lot of sacrifice and let go of a lot of life preservers to make it work.
Yeah.
And you have to sacrifice for a long time. I think that's the other thing people don't fully understand. Like, Zayn's got that overnight success song, and it's basically a song about how he spent 10 years for people to call him an overnight success because he got a little pop at one point, and people experience that all the time. That's kind of the way it is. Like,
so you're saying that
you got to be persistent.
Houston, Austin, Nashville. Like, if you want to actually like network and shake the hands you need to shake, maybe spend more time there, in those places, even if like you're not living there or something.
Even if you're not living there. I mean, I know a lot of cats who like live in Dallas, Fort Worth, and they go up to Nashville to hobnob and do whiskey jam or whatever it is, and that's good. I mean, you gotta put yourself in the scene.
Right.
But I think the real kicker is just like, if you really want to do it, you got to be persistent about it. You got to be doggish and bullheaded, and you got to believe in your heart that this is the thing that will give you the most like true success. Because true success is not about money or fame. It's about being satisfied with your day to day.
Right. Yeah, and that's different for everybody too. If you're a bass player and all you want to do is play bass and you just want to get a good bass gig, like, what is success? If you're a singer songwriter, like, I mean, we talk about it all the time, but Autumn and I, like, with Raglan, like, success for us is just like, if we could be playing the Blue Lights and the Motor Lounges and the, every weekend, and like we're selling those places out. I mean, that's good for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is success? Everybody, something different. Some people want to be an arena act, some people want to be, some people just want to make a living, I mean, I'll settle for whatever size act, so long as it pays the mortgage, Right. Yeah.
It's like, if I can put a roof over my head and eat Whataburger, once every 2 weeks, then it's fine.
Yeah. I hope people get something out of this. And again,
I hope so too.
Yeah. I can't say it enough, but like, I think that you guys are, there's a lot of buzz about you guys, not only from musicians or other people like in the industry, but like important people, if that makes sense. Like, there's a lot of people that their opinions really matter, that have y'all's back. And I mean, you guys have gotten pretty far in a short amount of time. And I really think that has to do with, people see the iceberg and they see like the top of it, and they see like, but they don't see like below surface, all of the other components of that iceberg, and I feel like that's like really good example of like what the Wilder Blue is, because all of you guys have been combined. You guys probably have decades of experience of touring and playing and you know.
Yeah, I think it might almost be like 100 years.
Yeah, you have a century
between the all of us.
Century of, you know. Yeah, hey, okay, you're calling you guys old now. I mean, that's behind the scenes that have went on for the last whatever amount of years, and it really kind of, you know, you guys finally getting into this, and it's paid off, and you guys are good guys, man. It's you know, I, no offense, I probably wouldn't be doing this right now if you guys weren't just like the nicest fucking people that we, you know. And
no,
yeah.
I'm not offended by that at all.
Yeah, so
you know, nobody likes a douchebag.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think being a not that you're not a, you guys aren't like all solid A+ musicians, but being like a solid B musician with a really good attitude will get you way farther than like a A+ musician with a shitty attitude any day, you know.
And I've seen that my fair share of times already, you know. And that's another thing. I will say that before I leave the, you know, if you want to do it thing behind, like if people don't want to hang out with you, why would they hire you? You know?
Right. Yeah, being a good hang is half of it, dude. It's actually most of it.
I think it's like 85 to 88% of it.
Yeah. It's a really specific number there.
Yeah, you know, 2% you hit the right notes 10% of the time, you know.
Yeah.